wood lathe. This is one of our more advanced machines in the wood shop. Usually we use this for advanced woodworking projects to make spindles, table legs, and things like that. This machine will take a square post, such as this, and you can turn it into something like this, a nice table leg or a coffee table or any size table that you would want to build. It could also be used just to turn round spindles like this. These had holes pre-drilled. These were actually mallet heads. With the wood lathe, you want to operate only with permission and after you've received instruction. Anyone that's going to utilize this machine for their project, I will go over it with them again and go over all the specific tools and everything that they're going to need for the machine. You want to take care of jewelry, loose clothing, and long hair. Again, just like the drill press, this one is very important because of the spinning parts of the machine. If anything loose on your body, your clothing, your hair, catch the machine, it's going to wind up and pull you into it very quickly. So please be very careful with that. Proper eye protection at all times are in place. You're going to make sure your guards are in place here. We have different things that we need to adjust on this machine when setting this up. And we want to carefully examine all our pieces to make sure there are no knots, cracks, or defects in the wood before putting this on the machine. Some of the parts of the machine, we have the headstock, which is driven by a motor in the bottom of the machine. This is what drives and moves your spindle so that you can turn it. The center for the headstock has spikes in it. Okay, that is your drive center. So that goes into your workpiece, grabs it, and makes it turn. The tailstock on this end just has a live center. So this is just on bearings, and that just spins with the headstock. The tailstock we move in so that it's set to the proper distance for our workpiece. We can loosen this up, slide it, and then lock it down. When we move our spindle in for our live center, we can then lock that down also, make sure everything is locked and tight and it's not going to move. So we can take our piece, we're going to line that up. We have the ends marked with a crosshair and a dot punched in each end. We're going to put that on the machine, line it up. And make sure that it is set in the end. Okay. And on the headstock end, there is a dial or handle on this end, and we're going to take our ramrod that comes with the machine. This rod goes through this end and goes the whole way into our drive center here. And what you're going to do, you're going to take one of our mallets, and we're going to hit the end of that rod, and that's going to punch that drive center into our workpiece. So we hit that a couple times. We're going to make sure that this is still pressed in tightly. And then I'm going to hit that again and make sure that the tailstock didn't bounce. We're going to turn that in so it's pressed tightly. Lock the tailstock down, and then our workpiece is in the machine. The bed of the lathe is the main part that the tailstock slides on. We also have our tool rest. The tool rest right here, we loosen this up, and it can slide, move that around, and it also has another lock that the tool rest itself can move up and down to set the height. So we're going to push this in. We move our workpiece so it's on a 45-degree angle. We want to move that tool rest so it's about 1/8 of an inch off of the corner of our workpiece. I'm going to lock the tool rest in place on the bed of the lathe, and then I'm going to move it up so we're right about the corner when that is on a 45 and the distance is set. Now, you want to turn this by hand and make sure that it's not going to hit our tool rest on any of the corners, because the corners are going to be the biggest part of that piece. So we turn that, that looks good. It has about an 1/8 inch clearance the whole way around, so that should be set. As your workpiece is turning, you want to make sure that it maintains that gap of about 1/8 of an inch, just a hair more. Obviously you're turning material off, so it's going to continuously get further away, so you can stop it, move the tool rest a little bit closer back in toward the workpiece, and just making sure that the workpiece is never going to hit the tool rest and catch, because it could break something apart. You also want to be very careful with the tool rest that you don't get your fingers too close, because this edge does almost get sharpened as the tool rest goes across there, and when that corner comes down, it could pinch you and do some major damage to your hand if you would get pinched in against that tool rest with your workpiece. Okay. Again, very important that we make sure there's no defects in the workpiece, because if there's any knots or cracks in that piece, when you hit it with the tool, the whole piece could actually blow apart and fly off of the machine. And making sure that there's nothing loose hanging off your body before starting and working with that tool. Okay? There are a lot of different tools that you can use with the lathe. The main tool that you're going to use is going to be your gouge. The gouge looks like a cup on the end, okay, and that's going to take off the bulk of the material down to your finish, and when you're ready to start shaping and doing things like that. So you take all the excess material off with your gouge. There are different size gouges. You have the large gouge, which is about 1 inch wide. We have a gouge that's about 1/2 inch, and then one that's down to about 1/4 of an inch. Okay. When you are holding these tools, I put my thumb on top, your hand below, and I put it against my forearm. When this sits on the tool rest, you want to make sure that it's actually sitting on the tool rest and your finger is not underneath. So we set that on the tool rest where it's not going to hit the piece, and I pinch the tool and have my knuckle against the tool rest on this surface right here. That way, when I have that pinched, I can slide my hand across and keep that really nice and steady, because I have it pinched and my hand is sliding along that tool rest. When you want to move in, you just very lightly ease in and keep going back and forth to take more material off. As you're using the tool, you want to make sure you have a good grip. You don't want to hold the tool too loosely. Nice firm grip tucked in against your arm, held down tight against the tool rest, pinched with the other hand so you can slide it across, and just have a good firm grip so that it doesn't kick away from you as it starts to touch the workpiece. Okay. Once you get down to the point where you're ready to start shaping and finishing your piece, we use what's called a skew. Okay, this is a flat tool. There are, again, several different sizes depending on the shape that you are making and what you want to do. And that gives you a little bit finer finish on your workpiece. There are shapes. This one arches over. This is a nice one to do inside curves with. We have a V-tip like this that you can do notches and grooves in a piece. And we also have your parting tool. Okay, this actually pushes into your workpiece and can separate the material or just make deep cuts straight into the piece. Okay. So once we have that rotating, again, we're going to drop the tool rest down just a little bit. Depending on the tool you're using, if we're using the large gouge to start, you see how that's going to sit on the bottom of that tool, and it's actually cutting up about 1/4 of an inch from there. So we want to make sure we're cutting as that's turning and coming down into your cutting edge. And when you're holding that, I'll demonstrate left-handed so you can see, when that's resting against that tool rest, you want the tool to be level. The edge is sharpened so that this angle is cutting at the correct angle when the tool is flat. If you angle the tool up or down, it could catch a corner and it could tear out your workpiece. You want to make sure the lathe is running at the proper speed for the operation. Just like the drill press, the larger the spindle, the slower the speed. We have a nice speed change down here on the controls. We have our controls down here. It has a large emergency stop button. We turn that to the right like several other machines we have and it pops out. We're going to hit the on button, and right now it's set very slow, and we can turn that up and increase the speed to our correct RPMs for what we want to do. Right now it's at 580. Again, the larger the spindle, the slower the speed's going to be, like the drill press. So we can turn that the whole way back down, and we're going to stop it for right now. Use caution and common sense to prevent turning tools from catching. Like I said, you don't want to turn the corners into the piece because it could tear out and damage the tool, damage the workpiece, and it could hurt you if a piece comes off of there, obviously. Want to select the correct tool for the cut you plan to make. Again, there are many different types of tools for different jobs that we're going to be doing and different shapes that you want to make. And even when you are using this machine, we have face shields that go over your safety glasses, so it's kind of double protection, but that keeps the wood chips flying up from going down your shirt and getting all over your face as you're trying to turn and focus on what you're doing. It's very important that as you're using the lathe, you don't allow anyone to stand around or near the machine while it's in operation. As you're turning, if anything happens, then you need to get out of the way. You don't want anyone right behind you so that you can move away from the machine. And also, if something would break or fly off of the machine, a little piece of wood or something like that may break off as you're turning it. You don't want anyone nearby that could get hurt by something coming off of there. When you have your part turned to the shape that you want, if you are turning down something like this, we're going to remove the tool rest, push that out of the way, and keep the piece on there, and we can sand our workpiece. You want to sand that very carefully, keeping your fingers underneath so they don't turn and get hit by the lathe or the workpiece turning over the top. Okay. And when we're done, we want to use a table brush or broom to clean everything off. We also have a dust collector hose right here that we can hook up and use kind of like a shop vac and vacuum everything off and keep this area nice and clean. You'll notice we also have a tool rest out on the end of the machine here. We have face plates where you can turn things like bowls or plates out on the end. We can change the face plates to different sides. We can do turnings on this end with the face plate or out on the end to do larger stock. And the tool rest on this end will help us to turn things larger than will fit on the inside of the lathe right here.